The first work of Adam Curtis's I was exposed to was 2015's Bitter Lake, which I viewed toward the end of 2016 as at a recommendation from Noel Oakeshott. Curtis has been described as analysing and tracing his central theme across recent human history, that central theme being, of course, that of power. Bitter Lake chooses as its subject the unfortunately timely wars over Afghanistan from the late 1970s up until the then present as of 2015, making a poignant comparison between the state of the Western world, previously the Soviets, playing Mount Olympus over the nation of Afghanistan, and the reactions which the human characters of Tarkovsky's Solaris have with that film's titular subject planet. In the oceans of Solaris, one feels and can then engineer their thoughts and emotions to be transmitted toward the celestial body itself, acting as input for the ethereal depths within the planet. However, the subjects receive a response back from the planet, as it, reading their pathologies, their psyches, projects it back toward them. Most famously, the protagonist of Solaris is chillingly, eerily reunited with his deceased spouse, enabling one of the most powerful sci-fi dramas or dramas ever composed. However, where Afghanistan and the West, or the Soviet Union, were concerned, the West was looking into a neurological mirror. Insofar as the people of Afghanistan wanted freedom, the West felt as though it could sympathize, even enable such exalted freedom. And yet what they faced in return was an opposition which had been enabled by a real politicking which was gradually exposing the West as a pragmatic bloc and not a moralistic endeavor. Radical Islam had been enabled in part by a series of deals which saw America and England financing the oil-rich Saudi kingdom, a relationship which would deteriorate during the 1970s as the West had chosen to support Israel during conflicts with its Arab neighbours, whilst all factions ignored the exiled, suffering Palestinians shamelessly. Similarly, American influence in Afghanistan had faltered, a presence which dated back to the late 40s, and so Soviet influence prevailed. The eventual conflict which proceeded saw American patronage welcomed by the Afghan nationals once more. Things were complicated further when the Saudi kingdom permitted American troops entry into their holy land, disenchanting the Afghani radicals, inspiring further their initiative to attack the West and to support the extremism of figures like Osama bin Laden. The attacks on September 11th was perpetrated by Saudi men who could attain American passports, although the determined base of operations for Al-Qaeda/the Taliban was, of course, Afghanistan. Osama was one member of the rather large Saudi bin Laden family, and he was renounced as the nation Afghanistan, not Saudi Arabia, the origin of modern radical Islam and the source of Western interference in the Middle East initially, became the target of the vengeful Western world. In a literal cause and effect sense, and two in a pathological philosophic sense, in the violence of Afghanistan, the Western world witnesses that which it often denies and suppresses, a complicated need for freedom and self-determination which is ever-shifting, intricate, and responding to several factors at any given time. It is not even an entirely abstract metaphor where the historical context is concerned. The conflict in Afghanistan reminds the West of their unprincipled dominion, and where the psychology of the people is concerned, stories of struggles against tyranny define the Western world, England, America, France, post-war mythologizing of the Allied powers, and they attempted to convince themselves that they were performing a liberation of Afghanistan, refusing to accept that the world might be a more complicated place than a black and white good versus evil space opera-esque drama, because then it not only puts the West's interest and influence into Afghanistan into question, but also the primordial myths of the Western consciousness itself as we know it. Perhaps a meagre piece on my end, but this is my endorsement of Curtis's superlative Bitter Lake, one of the very best documentary films of the entire 2010s.